The reason is very simple. In the times of G2, US-China G2, when Washington drops the Indo-Pacific nomenclature, India and Indonesia are talking about Indo-Pacific. What is the significance?
I think the message we received and we even gave was that in this context, the two countries need to work closer together.
Is this meeting or visit heavier on the strategic side?
Well, it is. It was heavy on the strategic side. Indonesia being close to China does not mean that Indonesia cannot also have close and friendly ties with India. Well, you see, there are certain things which were announced during the visit. But in addition, there were certain things which were discussed between the two leaders. And the discussion was very futuristic. There was, you mentioned IIM Bangalore. There was
Right.
expression of interest of getting an Indian IIT to Indonesia. So already the IIT Madras team is here. And that by the time President Prabowo goes to India for the BRICS summit, you will find another plethora of announcements. Of course, there is, you see the MOU between Midwest and Parminas, which is their company on rare earths. That will be a significant investment because India at the moment is not manufacturing rare earths at scale, and this collaboration will become very significant. Pharmaceutical is one area where you will find greater activity in the coming months.
Namaskar. This is Pratim Ranjan Bose, and you are watching Podcast with Pratim. I have with me the Mr. Sandeep Chakravorty, Ambassador to Jakarta. Welcome to the show, sir.
Namaskar.
Mr. Chakravorty, the recent visit of the Prime Minister, the Modi-Subianto meeting, to be more precise, is a huge bag of gains out of it. UPI, QRIS, which is the counterpart of UPI in probably in Indonesia, integration to boost the rupee-rupiah exchange bypassing dollar, boost to tourism, cooperation in space and nuclear research, Sabang port on the Malaccan Strait, BrahMos, investment in steel, access to rare earth, purchase of Astra air-to-air missile system by Indonesia, the Prambanan temple complex, the very interesting IIM Bangalore is going to set up its campus in Indonesia. I know it will be difficult to answer for you, but I'm tempted to ask, is it the most successful tour of Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, in recent times? Over to you.
Thank you, Pratimda. Happy to be on your show and happy to be speaking to someone based out of Calcutta because in Prime Minister's visit to Indonesia, there is a Bengal angle which I'll come to later. But yeah, means it is, I may sound a bit immodest, but I felt that Prime Minister's visit to Indonesia, this visit to Indonesia was not only very, very productive in terms of outcomes, but also I think the warmth of the welcome and the optics of the visit were very, very prominent. Right from Indonesian Air Force jets accompanying the Prime Minister as soon as his aircraft entered the Indonesian airspace, to even seeing him off outside the Indonesian airspace into Australian airspace. And President Prabowo attending every event that Prime Minister attended. I think these are very warm signals, very, very cordial messages that he conveyed. And of course, you mentioned a lot of substantive outcomes. They were on the pipeline. Some, of course, are still in the pipeline. But I think Prime Minister's visit was both substantially and from the form perspective, very, very important and significant. Yes, of course.
Well, you don't sound immodest because And you were saying that they were in the pipeline. Yes, they were in the pipeline, but I'm sure these are all, you owe it a lot. It has been your hard work over there. In the times of, I mean, the reason is very simple. In the times of G2, US-China G2, when Washington drops the Indo-Pacific nomenclature, India and Indonesia talking about Indo-Pacific. What is the significance?
You see, India and Indonesia are actually resident Indo-Pacific powers. They are important countries in the region. They are in the Indian Ocean. In fact, Indonesia is also in the Pacific Ocean. It straddles both the Indian and the in the Pacific Ocean. And I believe that whether you use a nomenclature or you don't use a nomenclature, the fact that we are maritime neighbors and we have been close partners for more than a millennia, and in today's contemporary context, when you mentioned about the G2 and what's happening in the world, I think the message we received and we even gave was that in this context, the two countries need to work closer together. Both have very avowed foreign policies of being strategically autonomous. Indonesia believes in independent foreign policy. It's called Bebas Dan Active, which is free and independent foreign policy. India also has belief in strategic autonomy. So I think if you're looking at a multipolar world, and of course that means a multipolar Asia, and India and Indonesia are important poles in the region. So I somehow felt that seeing the messages which came out in the meetings, and and also the content, that India and Indonesia have agreed and decided to work closer together in many areas. And we none of us want to put all our eggs in the same basket or in one basket. So when we are looking at hedging and options for India, Indonesia is a solid option, and I believe for Indonesia, India is also a very strong option. So I think there was, marriage of minds, convergences, coincidences, and it is now upon us to leverage them to make them work for our peoples.
We will come back to this question, but just a quick response from you. Is this meeting or visit heavier on the strategic side?
Well, it is. It was heavy on the strategic side because you mentioned there were certain, decisions in the defense side. We also agreed to work on the Sabang port with the coming up of the Great Nicobar port. I think Sabang acquires importance, and both leaders. It was in the pipeline for some time. It was on the back burner, the Sabang port, but I think now that port will find a lot of focus and attention. We'll have to see how it plays out and how what kind of development we're able to do. So I think the fact that India is developing the Greater Nicobar port has implications for Indonesia. And instead of being strategic competitors, I think we are looking at being strategic cooperators, in the sense we're looking at strategic cooperation where we can serve each other's needs. I think that is the strategic messaging from the visit. We are not strategic competitors. We are strategic. We believe in strategic cooperation. I think that is in a very short my response.
Okay. How do you think that Sabang and Great Nicobar port will shape the geopolitical future of Indo-Pacific? An added question to this, in the last decade, in the decade before this, there was a time when Indonesia, particularly after the financial meltdown, Indonesia was seen as getting closer to China, right? So from there to the Sabang port, what is the significance? Is there a strategic shift?
No, you see, I think the formulation may not be the right formulation. Indonesia being close to China does not mean that Indonesia cannot also have close and friendly ties with India. I think we should not look at bilateral relations as a zero sum game. We have many examples, and I think India is a very good example of how we are. Maybe we are close to. If you see the Gulf, we are close to so-called strategic competitors in the Gulf, and we are
Exactly.
close to all the sides, and we have been able
We're
to
working
maintain
with
that.
Iran and
Yeah,
Israel.
yeah, yeah. Working with Iran, working with UAE, working now there is strategic competition between Saudi Arabia and UAE, but we are very close to both Israel. So I think it is time we move beyond that. Of course, China is an important partner of Indonesia. China has now surplus resources. China's self-development or internal development has now peaked. So now it has surpluses to give to other countries, and any country would like to use those. The point is, are we in a position to give options which are better than China, or are we able to give more comfort to Indonesia in certain areas? We cannot compete with China in everything, but of course, we bring our own strengths. And of course, from Indonesia's perspective, I believe they would also want to have partners. They want to have good ties with China. They want to have good ties with India. Want to be an important part of ASEAN. They have good ties with US, EU, Australia. So everybody is trying to multi-align itself because risks of being in one block may not be or may be very high. So countries like Indonesia and India are trying to have good ties with as many countries as possible. And I think for such powers, it is a sound strategy because you see, even those who were in blocks or allied or allies, they are facing issues. You just look at how NATO is evolving these days. Could you ever imagined how the Western Bloc would be behaving today, a few years back? No. So I think it is a sound strategy both from India's perspective and Indonesia's perspective to have as many solid partners as possible.
Right. I was just thinking about NATO and the India-EU deal, which they were so bullish about. Uh, in the last podcast, you spoke about the lack of connectivity or air connectivity between India and Indonesia. And it was my complaint too. Did it improve? And well, let's go with this first. Did
Well,
it
it
improve?
has improved.
Mhm.
It has improved. Now we have 4 to 5 daily connections between India and Indonesia. But I would say that more cities of India and Indonesia need to be connected. Jakarta is not connected to New Delhi.
Till
I think the
date,
demand is there, but
till
at the
date.
moment, maybe it's not the right time to work on that because of the crisis, global oil crisis that is all countries are facing, and many airlines have actually cut down on flights. Even the regular flights connecting India to Bali have been reduced, and many airlines have reduced flights because aviation turbine fuel has become very expensive. But I think once the Gulf War ends and the fuel prices stabilize, we would be certainly looking forward to greater connectivity between India and Indonesia. I think that is one area where not much work has been done, and I'm sure there is enough market for that. You see, Prime Minister Modi went to Prambanan, and wherever he goes, he attracts tourists from India. And already I am finding a lot of people now preferring to go to Yogyakarta and then on to Bali, perhaps. Whereas, Bali has been the preferred destination in Indonesia for Indians. But Yogyakarta, I am very confident, will become another preferred destination. And then Yogyakarta has an excellent airport, but we don't have connectivity to India. So, again, another destination is looking for connectivity. And I believe in the coming years, we'll see more connectivity. When I came here, there was not a single flight connecting India and Indonesia. But the last 3 years, we have 4 or 5 flights. So, Indonesia is emerging as a preferred destination for Indian travelers. And I hope also that Indonesian carriers fly to India. That is one thing which has not happened at all.
It's very striking. It's the post-COVID, it is the next fastest growing economy after India. And it has been, India, Indonesia has long been partners, very peaceful neighbors. So all put together, it's certain things are inexplicable. Anyway, so that takes me to ask what steps India should immediately take, maybe in 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, to consolidate on the gains of this meeting.
Well, you see, there are certain things which were announced during the visit, but in addition, there were certain things which were discussed between the two leaders, and the discussion was very futuristic. They actually charted a course of action which will bring the two countries closer together. I think, personally, I felt that was the most important element of the visit. And although I may not be able to tell you everything, but one example I will certainly give where already work has started. There was, you mentioned IIM Bangalore. There
Right.
was expression of interest of getting an Indian IIT to Indonesia. So already the IIT Madras team is here, and they met with the education minister. So we are looking at not only bringing IIT level education to Indonesia, but the entire ecosystem which IIT Madras has generated about startups and innovation and centers of excellence. So there is interest in looking at that. Similarly, some of the investment decisions that we made, like SAIL investing in a stainless steel slab uh, factory in Indonesia. Work has started already on the feasibility study on preparation of TORs. You mentioned rare earths. Discussions have started on what how they will proceed. So I think some of the agreements and MOUs which were signed, those need immediate action, and some of the discussions which took place between the two leaders on that also, I think action is needed, and action will take place. So we have a full agenda, very active agenda, and you will see that by the time President Prabowo goes to India for the BRICS summit, you will find another plethora of announcements coming up and decisions being made public.
Okay. So you are keeping the least secret at this moment. But I'm I'm not a great admirer of a public sector anyway. So is there anything, any investment in the private sector that is being talked about? The startups, the investment flow. Over to you.
Well, of course, there is. You see the MOU between Midwest and Parminas, which is their company on rare earths. That will be a significant investment because India at the moment is not manufacturing rare earths at scale, and the this collaboration will become very significant. We are also seeing interest of some Indian companies in investment in the steel sectors, private sector companies.
Hmm.
But I think SAIL was the first of the block. They moved very fast, and they were able to tie up. But we have private sector investments in the steel sector. Jindal is an investor,
Hmm.
and now we are seeing interest from Vedanta to invest in the steel sector and nickel sector. So we have, of course, investments in the private sector. Some pharmaceutical companies have invested; their plants will come online very soon. And Indonesia has also expressed interest in other pharmaceutical companies to come and invest in Indonesia. So pharmaceutical is one area where you will find greater activity in the coming months.
Okay, great. That is. Any idea about the pipeline,
Which pipeline?
the investment pipeline from India and from Indonesia to India?
Indonesia to India investments are happening. We just had investment in making of aero bridges in Delhi, near Delhi. Then there are investments in petroleum pumps. We have some FMCG investments in India, in biscuits, in coffee. There's an Indonesian coffee chain which has opening up coffee shops in India. There are already, I think, a few. They are planning to expand in India. And you see, one problem, for instance, I'll give you a problem. In India, real estate is very costly. So
Yes.
you cannot have a coffee shop in a place which is back of beyond. A coffee shop has to be very prominently located. But any metro city you go, any prominent place you want to, you buy real estate, it is exorbitant. So these are some of the challenges some companies face, and then they reach out to us, and I have been giving them some ideas as to why you do not enter a franchisee model where the real estate is given by your franchisee, and you give your brand and your technology and your product. So they're looking at it. So it is easy to say that investments are not coming in, but there are some challenges which are very India specific, and Indonesian companies are navigating those and establishing in India. There is a $500 million investment in viscose fiber in Tamil Nadu. That is now getting into shape. Had earlier looked at some other state, but now they have moved to Tamil Nadu, and then that investment is coming through. So in the coming years, you will find sizable Indonesian investment in India, because Indonesian companies are realizing that India is a big market, and they have to be present in other geographies as well.
Yeah. Finally, trade. Indonesia fuels growth in India and China. It is India's one of the top trade partners. It is also a very matured market, as you said. I mean, relative compared to India. So, will this visit and whatever good work you are doing, will this trigger any growth in trade in foreseeable future?
I certainly think so. Our trade is about $30 billion. Our exports are about 7 billion, and their exports are about 23 billion. We buy a lot of energy and palm oil from Indonesia. But I think the trade basket is getting diversified. We are looking at agriculture, we are looking at pharmaceuticals, we are looking at processing. You see, just like we have Atmanirbhar Bharat, Indonesia has a policy of downstream, which means that they are not very keen to export raw materials. So if Indian companies understand this logic and invest in Indonesia and process the raw materials, then they can sell back to India and to global markets. Indonesia has a network of FTAs. They can leverage that, and there are several examples of how Indian companies have started manufacturing in Indonesia, and they are now selling it to the world. So, we can find synergy between Make in India and Make in Indonesia, and see how these two work together. I think there are many examples, and since Indonesia is rich in natural resources and Indian economy needs those, I think the old days of just buying raw material over. You will have to be more creative and invest in Indonesia, and then look at a trade investment related trade expansion. I think that model is the way it will work.
You have
So,
to
like
invest in the
how
value chain.
Japan or Korea have done in India.
Yeah, you have to invest in the value chain. You just
You
cannot
have to
take the
invest
raw
in the value
material
chain.
out.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So for shared benefits. Yeah, I always
Yes.
wonder the shirt that you are wearing. This is the Indonesian batik, and very. I mean, I love that country. They have their own dress code. It's the shirts, untucked. So I don't understand why these things. I don't. You said about coffee. Well, coffee day experiences before us. That's not a very good business anyway. So, but why these kind of things don't come to India? Why don't they open chains over here, Indonesian batik and etc.?
Well, I think it's also a question of preferences. I am not very sure if Indian and Indians prefer wearing them, but whosoever comes here buys a lot of batik. Of course, that is for sure. I
Rabindranath
do think
introduced
that.
batik in Shantiniketan.
Yeah. Tagore introduced batik in Shantiniketan. In fact, we are celebrating the India-Indonesia. Both countries are celebrating the Tagore-Dewantara Year of Culture and Educational Exchange. So a prime minister announced that 26, 27, because in 27 it will be 100 years of Tagore coming to Indonesia. Now, you mentioned batik. So what is happening is that we are trying to do our bit. Next week is the Indonesia Fashion Week, and we have invited an artist from a designer from Shantiniketan, Mrs. Papri Boshak, who works actually with Indonesian and Indian textile and designs. And so she has curated garments to using Indian textiles and Indonesian motifs and modern fashion. So she is an invitee at the Indonesia Fashion Week. Similarly, there is a weavers collective in Kolkata, Weavers Nest, I think it's called. There is Madam Darshan Shah. She has compiled a book known as Sarong to Sari, how the Indonesian and the Southeast Asian textiles have influenced our garments. So she has compiled a book which will be launched early next year. So we have been involved in promoting these linkages, and it is up to entrepreneurs and individuals and private parties to take it up. Government can only do that much, give the idea, push people, and ultimately it is up to private entrepreneurs to take up. So I am very excited about an Indian designer participating in the Indonesia Fashion Week.
Yeah, ultimately it's about people. I mean, I don't find anyone but ourselves to blame. I wore batik in my younger childhood days. Batik became a fashion in those days. And yes, Rabindranath introduced it. In Odisha, they still annually hold the Bali Yatra festivals. So I don't understand why Indonesia goes out of our discussion. And and uh, I mean, recently after the Prime Minister's tour, I saw some social media propaganda that the Indonesian newspapers did not give it publicity or something. So, in fact, I saw news in Jakarta Times. I think you sent me one
No,
thing.
no, I think that is absolutely bunkum. There was huge coverage of Prime Minister's visit in all media, in social media, in print media, in the digital media. I don't know where people are coming from. But I must say that you mentioned Bali Jatra. In fact, I was just replying to a tweet by Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, who was involved in the INVS Cordinia project, where the Indian stitch ship went to Oman.
Right.
We have been talking for some time as to why the second trip or voyage of INVS Cordinia should not be to Bali and Indonesia. And he seems to be interested. So again, we have to make sure that Indonesia doesn't get out of our radars, and we have to keep on doing things which make sure that Indonesia and India remain in each other's radars and we work together. So cultural exchanges, commercial exchanges, investment, trade, people to people contact, in investments, technology transfer, all these help in building the relationship. And not every element is important. So we are always trying to make sure that we remain in focus, and of course media has a big role to play in that. And I believe that Prime Minister's visit to Indonesia was quite a media event, and even now I'm getting a lot of social media posts, particularly for instance the investment decisions and his visit to Prambanan temple. That really caught the imagination of people in India, and we'll now see how ASI works on restoration of the temple. And once that temple is restored, you can imagine the impact it will have on our
So,
collective
so,
conscience.
so he helped Indonesia to diversify its tourist spots, right?
Yes, 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 certainly. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving time out of your busy schedule and as part of the cultural connect. So we will hold the next podcast as and when you give time in Bengali and more on the Tagore and this side, cultural side.
Certainly, certainly. We have a year-long program of activities and events. Let that start rolling, and then we will have a podcast with the participants in that event. We will get Darshan Shah, we will get Papri, we will get others who are involved in celebrating it, and our Indonesian friends. And we can have a very interesting podcast with the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you.